Good afternoon, my darlings. It's Monday, the 8th of April, the day after my birthday. And I was quite busy yesterday, obviously, with my family, celebrating 48 years on the planet. And it was an incredibly busy day. We didn't do much, we didn't go anywhere. We just messed around at home and just had a day as a family, which in these days and ages, it's not to be knocked, right? Well, today I bring you Ice by Arnold Federbush. This is from the 1st of January 1978, so it's not quite 50 years old, but we're not far off. If you enjoy The End of the World, you are going to love this book. This doesn't deal with an ice age that comes on in thousands of years. This is an ice age that comes on very, very quickly. We're talking about the collapse of civilization worldwide due to a very, very fast-paced climate change caused by pollution. Yeah. It was quite a heavy thing in the 1970s, whilst I thought that we were going to end up not heating up and having runaway climate of 2 degrees Celsius, etc, etc. This is actually the opposite. We thought we were going to go into an ice age. And bearing in mind the winter that America had in 1978, you can see why. Yeah. Basically, with the climate change, it results in an ice age and the unravelling aspects of our society. Yes, it's not the brutality that we do to each other in this book beggars belief. Yeah. Those that have, those that have not will chase the ones that have, definitely. And they won't be polite. They will not say, please give me and help me. No, they'll just take it on. And if you put up a fight, they're going to shoot you. Yeah. So take note, preppers. This book should be on your list to read. It's a cracking read. It's absolutely exciting. Very, very exciting. Anyway, saying it's very exciting, it's also a little bit dated with the way it treats the ladies in this book. Just be aware of that. The men are gung-ho and we're going to fix it all and women are going to be glad of it. Yeah, exactly. What we will deal with in this book is the ultimate, you have to try and survive. There's we cover apartheid Africa, we go through Yugoslavia, and we cover a little bit of Canada, a little bit of India is in here as well, so it's not solely concentrated on the United States, which is quite refreshing, because there did seem a glut of books during the 70s which the disaster only seemed to happen in or was only focused on in America, and although you get snippets around the world of what's been going on, you don't necessarily get the storylines from there. And in this book, it's quite refreshing that you do. I'll read you the blurb on the back anyway. 2 young people in love, Mark and Karen. Now, Karen, amazingly, is she's quite the feminine. Yeah, she's quite the hero, or I should say the heroine. Mark's lovely, but He's not ready for the new world, and Karen is. And that is a bit of a problem within their relationship. Karen can see the disaster coming from a mile away, although Mark can see it coming from a mile away. Mark thinks like a typical man, that if we do this, this and this, we can fix it. And Karen, thinking a little bit more long term, is like, well, we've tried this, this and this, and it didn't work, and we need to now do this, this and this to prepare for what's coming. And that is where you've got the problem with the pair of them. It's quite interesting how their relationship develops and evolves throughout the novel. And I would say, going towards the end, you see the disintegration of society and the environment to which we're all living in. I try not to spoil it too much. And their relationship and how it's tested. Anyway, I'll continue. Two young people in love, Mark and Karen, battle for survival in a world that has become hell frozen over. New York buried under a new ice age, the big freeze swirling, wild, dangerous winds across the Arctic oceans, across the Humboldt, the glacier. In a flash, this glacier grows and creeps outwards, gathers force, becomes a gigantic imperialist to the world. And how long can people survive with this ginormous glacier that is eating everything in sight, covering the land and making the temperature drop like you've never seen a temperature drop? Is this the way the world ends, buried in ice? Well, that doesn't pique your interest. This artwork is by Lou Feck. Now, that you don't normally get a book that is like that and then opens up into a beautiful piece of artwork. Now, I have tried to get a copy of the Lou Feck artwork, because I mean, who the heck wouldn't want that hanging on their wall? Well, me, I like this kind of artwork. I like eschatology, I like end of the world, disaster novels, and you're not going to get much more of a disaster than an ice age. Yeah, there are quite a few little plot holes in this, and it doesn't always tell you who's talking to who when you're reading, so it can slightly get a little bit confusing that way. And it kind of, the time scale of the book tends to slip away, and sometimes you don't know how much time has passed between one month to the next. I would say scientifically it's got some plot holes. Some of the science doesn't make sense, right? And bearing in mind, I've told you before that I've worked with scientists. Take for instance the book I did called The Sixth Winter. Now, if you get the sixth winter and you get ice, you end up with The Day After Tomorrow. If you think about the two books, if they got together and had a baby, then The Day After Tomorrow, the big ice age hitting New York City. A lot of the ideas for that film, Roland Emmerich, were you reading this book? Had you read The Sixth Winter? Have you been talking to some scientists? Because between the two, we ended up with A Day After Tomorrow, which is a cracking film. Scientifically a little bit questionable, again, good fun, you know. So anyway, get back to this wonderful book. Let me think, how am I going to start it? It's a variation of the global ecological disaster. It's based on the premise that if the atmosphere is heating up, then there must be more moisture in the atmosphere, leading to more precipitation in certain parts of the world, i.e. over the colder parts of the earth. Then this would take the form, in many cases, i.e. lots more rain, rain turning into snow, snow and rain, and cold temperatures and more ice building up, and then it reaches a critical point, and it would lead to a sudden switch in the climate to an ice age. But it doesn't happen that fast. Well, at least I haven't seen it happen that fast, but don't quote me on that. Look out the window in the morning. Is it snowing? So I'm going to read you a little bit out of the book. And it was to do... Let me see if I can find it. I need to find the right place. Yeah, I can't find it at the moment. Oh dear. Ah, here we are. This is a little bit of survival. The man was in rags, crawling dangerously close to the lair as he sought cover from the snow. The husky dug its paws into the snow, bared its teeth and growled. The man gave a cry, reached through the snow and came up with a book, one of many left strewn about, and hurled it. The husky howled, more in rage than in pain, backed away and emitted a low-charged snort. The next moment, the man was surrounded by a threat far more terrifying than mere starvation. A pack of great fierce dogs, circling warily, fangs bared, mouths salivating, throats emitting low, ominous growls. Cowering, the man groped again through the snow and came up with something heavier, a strange stone carving making a heavier missile. He held it and caught the shipwreck. The dog went sprawling and howling in the snow, but it picked itself up again. The pack was galvanized, and now they all came, charging in rapid sequence, taking sharp, quick bites and darting back before the man could strike. No sooner did one dog retreat than another came charging from a new direction. The man groped frantically and came up with another oddity from a packing crate, a whip with a 30-foot lash. It was an impossible object to use properly, especially in such close quarters. Finally, he wheeled it from the top end, using the handle as a club. The dogs ducked, howled ferociously, and the handle came down on their heads or flanks, but it only enraged them further, and their attacks came faster. Each successive slash of claw or fang opened more of the man's rags until suddenly the husky cut through a vein in the man's thigh. The dog felt warm, delicious syrup in his mouth, giving his tongue the same exhilaration the snow had given his skin. So the hated and feared human was no more than a squirrel or cat, mere meat and blood. The husky was freed. His vocal cords responded to the sensation, giving voice to his feeling. He jerked his neck back and uttered a cry of his ancestors. Then, maddened with totality of sensations, he dove for the human. The man managed one last swipe with the whip before it fell from his grasp. So there you go, the animals have turned on the humans. There is no more food to be coming from the pet store, and now the food is you. Told you, preppers, you need to realise it in a really bad situation. Yeah, the animals might think, if I don't get my frisky bits, Sonny, you're it. Yeah. So that's one part out of this book. And it's quite a good read. And doesn't that just like give you chills to your bones? I know. Anyway, we're going to be talking a little bit more about Mark and Karen, because Karen has a son called Danny. Danny's about 11 or 12. He's not quite a teenager. And so obviously she's had him with another gentleman. And Mark is her new partner, and Danny doesn't really know how to take to Mark. Although they both share a common interest in the weather, because Mark actually works at the university. Crikey, I can't remember the name of the university where he used to work. I know it's in New York City. I think it's a New York University. I used to have an idea. He works with a Professor Guzman, and the Professor Guzman is Mark Haney's sort of like lead professor, and it's in New York where his university, you know, one of the places where he works. Let me think. What else am I going to read you? I'll read you the first bit. Yeah, give you an idea of what you're letting yourself in for. The latest of the weather satellites was by far the most complex and the most successful of a series that began in 1960 with Tyros 1. It orbited from pole to pole at right angles to the Earth's rotation, so timed as to daily scan the whole of the planet as it passed beneath. It tracked the currents of air and water working their slow, sinuous paths from equator to poles, but watched with eyes far more varied and subtle than the human ones. Certain sensors were attuned to invisible segments of the spectrum. Others were turned towards space and noted the emissions of sun and stars and space itself. All the known influences upon weather and climate were recorded and transmitted openly and freely to radio receivers about the Earth. With its solar batteries supplying unending power and its orbit perfectly balanced, there was every reason for technicians to boast it would function in the protected vacuum of outer space for thousands of years, even if unneeded or superseded, endlessly transmitting its complexity of data without worry or wonder if it had an audience. At night it shone by intercepted sunlight, an apparent star except for its great speed and path, clearly different from other stars. A primitive tribesman contemplating the night sky might eventually take note of this curious light and ponder. Greenland, 35 miles southwest of Humboldt Glacier. The Eskimo village lay at the foot of the mountains, shielded from the Arctic winds, and so the night was quiet. Outside the igloos, the only sound were the heavy breathings of the sled dogs, with occasional muted snarls as they dreamt of the hunt. One wakened and its sleepy attention was drawn to the igloo. From the oil lamp glowing inside, the shifting shadows indicated that someone was awake and prowling about. But this was of little interest to the dog. It closed its eyes and returned to its dreams. Inside, the old woman finished sewing her clothes. It had been a long and arduous task, for not only were her tools primitive, a sharpened bone for a needle, seal sinew for thread, but her fingers were stiff, her eyes dim, and the teeth within which she softened the fur worn to the gums, those teeth that she still had, but the love of her labour lessened the pain, for these were her finest clothes, her final clothes, richly embroidered, soft, thick, and comfortable beyond all others, for in these clothes she was to die. Suddenly the stillness was shattered by a sound like an immense gun that echoed across the valley. The old woman stiffened and listened. There was a very sharp splintering, but pitched so deep she could feel it inside her. Then came a series of gunshots and splinterings, sometimes alternating, sometimes combining into rolling thunder, that was answered before the echoes died, and even the ground shuddered. She looked about her at her sleeping family. They stirred, rolled over, but did not awaken. The sounds, though awesomely loud, were persistently irrelevant to them, and so they were ignored, just as a sleeping mother shuts out noises outside her window, but springs awake to an irregularity in her child's breathing. For the old woman, the sounds held great and immediate meaning. She looked at her son and daughter-in-law, strong and well, and at her grandchildren, who were ably cared for. She watched lovingly as they gradually settled back and slept on comfortably. She remembered her own mother, how she too had dressed in her last and best clothes when the tribe had moved on to better hunting, while she stayed behind, waiting to starve to death or to meet the great white bear should he come first. It was all quite right and natural that the person who could no longer hunt, nor sow, nor contribute to the survival of the family be left to die. And though the occasion was joyous, though that person knew he or she would soon be bound up in the spirit of all being, and be reunited with those who had died before, there was still sadness at taking leave from the living. Generation after generation it had been this way, until it had come at last to this unworthy woman. Herself she felt unworthy, but with a great difference. Her death would be of far greater magnitude. She would be taken into the ice itself, into the spirit of all being. She would see her own parents and grandparents again, and would no longer know the pain of old age. She smiled at the thought, and then she realized the sounds had stilled, and the night was quiet again. Lovingly she folded her clothes and put them carefully away. Soon she would wear them. So the old lady is an Eskimo, Inuit, and part of their tradition is that the family, the strength, move forward, and the elderly and dying stay behind to die, so they don't become a strain upon the family. What a very noble thing to do. In our society, things are different. When we become old, we try to function the best way that we can, and our children, who are probably parents themselves at that point, still pop by to make sure that we're okay. And when things get too much for us, we go into a nursing home, you see, and that's not their way here. They don't have the nursing home. To them, the ice is where you leave me and let me go back to the all beings. Perhaps we ought to try it. Maybe going forward, if anything ever happened to us or to society, or we had a natural disaster which meant things like nursing homes didn't exist anymore, perhaps we might revert to that when we become too old and become a burden upon the family. Perhaps it would be the best thing for us to step to one side and, gently pass away, not causing a problem to the clan moving forward. Maybe that's how we will end up. We'll go back into tribalism, which is what this book is. It's how we as people cope with an oncoming ice age, and how the brutality of the situation brings out the brutality in ourselves, the way of our world as we know it, with computers, with electricity, with running water, with heat and food on the shelves in the supermarkets, food processing plants, being able to grow our crops, all that, everything changes when an ice age hits. It's what you can do to adapt to this situation is the difference between you dying and surviving. It's the old adage, the old prepper adage. What can I do today to make sure tomorrow is bearable? What can I do today to survive, to make tomorrow I'm able to survive, and the day after, and the day after that. That's why you're called preppers, because you're going to be prepared. I would definitely give this book a read. It does have plot holes. It is a jumpy read. The way Arnold writes, sometimes you're not entirely sure who's addressing who. It can be a little bit misogynistic where the women are concerned, where men are men and women are glad of it. Take Karen on. She's not your average woman, and Mark sadly doesn't understand that right until the end. Mark, if you'd just taken a step back, lad, and just taken a look at how special Karen was. Yeah, but you didn't. Damn it. Mark, what were you thinking? She's lovely. Karen's wonderful. She's raised Danny on her own because her other partner left her. You know, she's not a woman to be trifled with. And what she doesn't know about Eskimos, I mean, you know, she studied them, for goodness sake. She's an expert in Eskimos. Of course she's going to know how to survive in an ice age and beyond. She studied the Eskimo way. Yeah. How absolutely annoying that you didn't listen to her. You should have done. I'm going to read you a little bit more. I'm just picking for you. I think I'll go to the back. This is an argument between Mark's philosophy and the Eskimo philosophy. If we're alive, then there must be others alive somewhere. We're all right now, the philosophy according to Fink. We're dead, and therefore so everyone else is. How are we dead? Mathematics, Karen, the highest truth. You may know your Eskimos, but I know my calculus. Well, I used to know it. He looked up with momentary faraway gaze. I feel parts of my brain rusting away lately. He came back to earth, but I still remember my long division. Well, your term, the Eskimo unit, father, mother, children, dog team, maybe an anthropologist, together they need 400 caribou a year, or the equivalent. That's one caribou every day, day in and day out, plus an extra one 3 times a month. That month after month, day after day, for the rest of our lives, unless we fall behind. Then we have to get 2 the next day. We've been doing it. It's been hard, but we've been doing it. Face the mathematics, Karen. We've been getting our 1 a day, but not the extra ones. Just catching one soaks up all our energies, and there's nothing left. We're incurring a debt that's slowly mounting, and little by little it's destroying us. We're not all complete units, Lou. You and Helen, for instance. Yeah, well, who knows? Someday we might shake hands and that'll get her pregnant right there and then. So Mark's worrying about the food sources, where it's all going to come from, how they're all going to breed, how the human race is going to continue. And without the modern amenities, the modern life that we have, antibiotics, fresh water, something to cook, gas, yeah, let's have 3 gas coming out, you know, being able to make a meal. being able to go to the supermarket. Mark's pointing out that all these things that we have taken for granted are no longer there. And Karen is basically trying to say, but we need to go back to a hunter-gatherer existence. We need to live like the Eskimos live. And that is the problem between Mark and Karen. Mark's not prepared to give up his old way of life and embrace the new. And Karen has ditched the old way of life and is embracing the new. And that is where their relationship is struggling. Won't spoil it for you. I'm not actually going to read you the end, but it's going to give you a lot to think about. It's a very interesting book. If you really enjoy End of the World, if you like Ice Age, if you like survivalism, if you enjoy New York City getting covered in snow and people running around screaming and slaughtering each other, there's a brilliant scene where they're trying to get the really poorly patients airlifted out of a hospital in New York City, and the helicopters are coming in, but the temperature's dropping so quickly that the rotor blades are stopping turning, and it's not long before the doctors realise that nobody is getting out of the hospital, and everybody, including themselves and the nurses, are all going to freeze to death and die. They're going to freeze and die before they die of starvation. It's that brutal, and at that point it becomes every man and woman for themselves. And you know, sick people, I'm sorry, you're just gonna have to, you know, die, because we're not here to take care of you. We can't even take care of ourselves. There is a wonderful captain on a ship. He actually gets his ship and he turns it into an icebreaker, and he collects Mark and Karen and Danny and all the other scientists from the university in New York, and they try to make a run for it, and they end up, they can't escape New York. The sea freezes, and it's so thick and deep is the ice that they just can't escape. They were hoping to try and get to South America, but it just didn't work. And on the flip side of things, we go to Florida, and that's the last bastion in the United States of America that has heat in the water, and everybody turns up in Florida, and it's so overcrowded that people are killing each other for on a square inch of land, and they're stripping absolutely everything. Florida is a hellhole. On the opposite side, you've got everybody freezing to death and dying in New York. You've got everybody starving to death and beating each other to death in Florida. So what an absolutely horrific way for us to go, and there's no middle ground, apart from Karen is screaming at the top of the lungs, if we don't adapt and we don't turn and live like the Eskimos live, we've got no chance. And Mark refuses to listen. So you'll have to find out what happens between Mark and Karen. I won't spoil it for you because it is absolutely fantastic. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I'm not sure if it's still in print. I will check that for you now. Ice by Arnold Federbush. still in print. You can get this on Kindle, but as being in print in a book form, no. You'll have to try and get one from a second-hand bookseller. I warn you, it won't be cheap. Gosh, let's see, how much was this book when it first came out? Doesn't even have a price tag on it. I can't imagine it'd be a lot, maybe a couple of dollars, because I've had to get this imported from America. Doesn't have a price on, but I'm guessing it's just a couple of dollars. But I can assure you, when my husband had this imported for me, it cost slightly more than a couple of dollars. Oh, good grief. Yeah. So if you can get this on Kindle, fantastic, and that's probably your best bet. As far as buying a second-hand copy, you probably wouldn't be able to pick one up for maybe less than £25, maybe £30 in a poor condition. If you want in something like what I have, which is near enough, it's got a couple of chips, but kind of mintish condition. My husband spent a little bit more than £25. Yeah, just moving out. Yeah, exactly. And then that'll give you an idea of how much he spent on this one for me, because I've been searching for this one quite a while, and I'm still searching for the artwork from Lou Feck. Whether or not I'll ever manage to get a picture of the artwork from Lou, we will never know. I will keep trying. I do truly hope you give this book a chance. It's a lot of fun, slightly misogynistic, deals with the relationship between Mark and Karen, and Mark's professors and fellow scientists and scientists from around the world. Because it's, like I said, it's quite refreshing for it not to just solely be set in America. It is set around the world, because the Ice Age just doesn't happen in America. It happens all around the world. But look out for the hospital scene, because that is quite brutal. Yeah, it is. Oh, and also look out for the scene with the farmer and his wife and his daughter when they get stuck in a giant snowstorm. Oh, that, if that doesn't make you cry, I don't know what will. Honestly, it's heartbreaking, that part. But also, yes, look out for all the little animals as well, and what the animals are doing. The dogs. Oh, the dogs. Good grief, they go feral. Yeah. They used to think dogs were man's best friend. Ooh. If Fido doesn't get his funky chunks, you're it, mate. I promise you. Anyway, my darlings, happy readings and enjoy. And I'll see you next time with another absolutely fabulous book. Yeah. So take care of yourselves. See you later.